Good evening. This meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment of the Township of Union is being held pursuant to the Open Public Meeting Law, C-231 Laws of New Jersey, 1975. Notice of this meeting was advertised in the Local Source and the Star Ledger, the newspapers of record, and notice has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building adjacent to the municipal clerk's office. Roll call, Mr. Manguso.
Mr. DiGiovanni.
Here.
Mr. Howe is absent. Mr. Wiley.
Here.
Miss Alexander.
Here.
Miss Martins is absent. Mr. Bentavegna.
Here.
Miss Scott.
Here.
Mr. McNeil.
Here.
And Mr. Champy is absent.
There being a quorum present, this meeting is declared open. Could I have an approval of the minutes of the September 14th meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the meeting minutes of September 14th, 2022 be approved and written and dispensed with their reading.
Could I have a second, please?
I second.
Second by Ms. Alexander. Okay, all in favor, please?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Minutes are carried. Communications, Mr. Manguso?
Yes, I received a letter yesterday from Mr. Hale's office for calendar number 3394 that Mr. Pansula will address.
We'll address that when the matter's called. Council's here this evening for that case.
Okay, then our first order of business otherwise is calendar number 3403, NB Home Improvements, LLC, 1225, 1227 Morris Avenue, Block 1408, lots 7 and 8.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Members of the board, Stephen H. Merman, appearing on behalf of the Hale offices of Jaffa and Wargaft with regard to that application. That is the application that Mr. Manguso indicated that correspondence was sent. We have respectfully requested an adjournment of that matter from this evening's calendar because we have not received all the necessary reports so that we could prepare in order to move forward. So with that, we're asking for an adjournment. I believe there's already been a date assigned to it.
There's a date certain, yes, it's referenced in the,
October 19th.
it's October 19th. It's a regular meeting night of the board at 7:30 in person in this room. They have waived any time constraints that confront the board to allow for the adjournment to that date. So as a matter of course, Mr. Chairman, I suggest that we make a motion in a second, and all in favor. I don't know if you do a roll for that or not, or can do it all in favor.
Mr. Pansel, I just want to make sure that this is sufficient, that we will not have to renotice for the upcoming meeting.
So noted for the record. As long as the
Thank you.
board is advancing of the adjournment, I'll make another announcement for the public's benefit.
Okay, I'll accept the motion for the adjournment of calendar number 3403.
I make a motion that we adjourn calendar 3403 to October the 19th.
Moved by Ms. Alexander. Can I have a second, please?
Yeah, second that.
Seconded by Mr. Bentavegna. All in favor? Do we need a roll call, Mr. Manguso? Or?
Mr. Wiley.
Yes.
Miss Alexander.
Yes.
Mr. Bentavegna.
Yes.
Miss Scott.
Yes.
Mr. McNeil.
Yes.
Mr. DiGiovanni.
Yes. Thank
For
you.
the public's benefit, calendar number 3403, NB Home Improvements LLC, if you're here for that, for 1225, 1227 Morris Avenue, Block 1408, lots 7 and 8. It's a mixed-use building with retail and multifamily residential. It was scheduled for tonight. It's been carried to the Zoning Board's regular meeting night of October 19th at 7:30 in this room. There will be no further notice, either a mailed notice or publication, and it will be a part of the agenda for the board on October 19th at 7:30. A member of the public has a question. You can come up to the podium, please, and identify yourself. No problem.
That's Lee Stewart. I live on Highgate Terrace. I'm a homeowner.
Okay.
And I would like to request that there is notice to the other residents within the 200 feet, because I know there may be a couple questions that people would like to raise.
My suggestion is that
That's only fair.
to the extent that you know there are additional questions, that you try to notify your neighbors. This meeting is being publicized tonight, both here in person as well as on the TV. So they have time either to get their questions ready to be heard by the board on October 19th, or can communicate with the building department during normal business hours to make sure any concerns or questions they have are communicated, and we could address them at the public hearing.
But wouldn't it be fair for them to be notified that there's been an adjournment?
The fairness is tonight we're scheduled to go, that the notice requirement is to have them notice for tonight's meeting. They've done that. So anyone who was going to make a question tonight would have to be here already. If we went forward tonight, they wouldn't have been able to ask those questions.
Okay,
So
very
the
good.
fact, but, you know, because you have the ability of additional time, now, if you do know for sure there are specific questions of your neighbors, please let them know to make sure that gets communicated through either yourself or someone who will attend, or through counsel who's giving you his card for the applicant. You can certainly reach out to them, and they can try to help you with any questions that might have.
Sure, sounds good. I appreciate
Okay.
it. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Next calendar, business calendar number 3394, Maxon Hyundai, 2329 Route 22 West and 1010 Gilb Street, Block 3210, lots 2.01 and lot number 5. Mr. Merman.
Again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Stephen H. Merman from the Hale offices of Jafferbound Wargaft, appearing on behalf of the applicant. This matter has previously been heard by the board on, I believe it's been 2 occasions over the last year or so. The board is aware that Maxon Hyundai is undertaking a major renovation of its property, and tonight we're here relative to one final piece of cleanup work. After the application had already been approved, my client received a request from Hyundai for the inclusion of an indoor delivery area within the project. As a result of that, there had to be some changes to the site plan that had previously been approved. There is a slight addition to the building, and there's some changes in the parking. And without further ado, what I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce Josh Tyner, our engineer, who will run through the changes that are being proposed. I want the board to know that Mr. Anthony Teresa is here on behalf of the applicant and is available to answer any questions that the board might have, but based upon our prior testimony before the board with regard to this, we didn't feel that it was necessary. I also have with us our architect, who also would be available to answer any questions that are created as a result of the changes that Mr. Tyner is going to outline for the board.
Mr. Merman, several board members, including myself, were not here for the original application. Is it possible that you could review briefly what that entails so we become somewhat familiar with it?
Mr. Tyner is here, available, and he's had
Right,
plans in
Mr.
front
Chair-
of him to go through.
Right, Mr. Chairman, that's a good question, but I will state for the record that the resolution was memorialized and passed recently. The board did grant the relief applicable. I believe this witness was there at the original meeting as well. So, yes, if you can provide a short summary. The resolution has been passed. It is binding. Tonight, we are simply dealing with this, the addition, as it were. It's described best in the correspondence from council, which is a part of the record. I've marked it A1A for the record. It's the August 17th correspondence from Jafferbound Wargath Council for the applicant, which summarizes the adjustment. I've marked A2A, the revised site plan as it was submitted with that correspondence, and I've marked A3A, A for the amendment, the colorized version of the site plan that was presented tonight for consideration, and I think that's what the witness is going to go over with the board tonight. So if I can just ask the witness to raise your right hand and swear or affirm that the testimony you provide this evening is the truth and the whole truth.
Yes, it will.
For the record, your name and business affiliation.
Joshua Tyner,
Could you spell it, please?
T-I-N-E-R, first name Joshua, J-O-S-H-U-A. I'm
Thank
the Vice President of Engineering at Redcom Design and Construction, LLC.
Would you give us a brief background of your qualifications, please, Mr. Tyner?
Yes, I graduated from Penn State University in 1995 with a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering, and became licensed in civil engineering in 2003. I've been practicing as an engineer ever since, and all my licenses are current. No change since the last.
We'll accept his credentials, Mr. Merman. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tyner, based on the comments made by the chairman, could you just run through a brief overview of the entire project?
I just want to confirm with how I'm going to present these exhibits. I have three. Two of them were previously presented. If you want to renumber them or all three as a package are stapled in what I gave her, that can be considered A3A? Okay. And would the board members like 11 by 17s of that? I do have them. They can see it on the monitor, if that's fine. If you'd like a printed copy, then let me know. Okay, great. So, so this is an aerial exhibit of the properties in question. They're outlined in red, just from a distance. This is Route 22 westbound, seen here, and this here is Route 22 eastbound. This is about 1.3 miles to the west of the Garden State Parkway, and just past, I'm going to zoom in now, just to the west of what's called Gelb Avenue. Here's Gelb Avenue here, Route 22 westbound. So Maxon has a Buick dealership on this lot 4. No changes being made. They actually own this rear lot, which is block 3209, lot 1. They park inventory on there, and they also have easement agreements with NJDOT to this former right-of-way of Valley, the Rahway Valley Railroad line that was from prior years. But all the work that's being proposed tonight is on these two properties, which is block 3210, lot 2.01, and block 3210, lot 5. And the work in question, this lot 5 has 2 existing buildings on it. The modifications that we're going to be making is on this lot here, or on this portion of the building here, and then on lot 2.01, what was previously approved is demolishing this entire building and proposing this new building, which actually looked like this. So you can see, I'll show you the, let me go to now what was the prior colorized rendering of the site. All right, so all the work is in here. And then coming down, we had a notch in this proposed building on lot 5 that was basically demolishing a building that was portions of the building that were here, and there was another portion of the building that's here that's being demolished. And then on this lot, lot 2.01, is where the new proposed building was situated.
So that entire building on 201 is being demolished?
This is right. The entire building is being demolished, and what's being proposed is this new building. Now, what we had in the past was the rear face of the building went like that, straight across the back of the building. And there was this dashed line right here represents a canopy overhang on the building. So, and again, on this building, we had this large notch that we were taking into the building. So now I'm going to go to the new exhibit so you can just see the differences. This is, again, as explained by the attorney. This is due to basically changes that Mazda requested after we had gotten the approval.
That's Hyundai. Mazda is
Oh,
vacating.
did I say Mazda?
You did say Mazda.
Oh,
Mazda's vacating the building.
yeah, Hyundai.
Good catch,
Oh,
Steve. You're
yeah.
listening.
Thank
He's
you.
listening.
Glad someone's paying attention. All right, so the face of this building, as previously approved, notched in like that. We're just going to continue a straight alignment of that edge of that building, and so it basically made this building a little bigger than what was previously proposed. And then this building here, which is the all-new building, had that alignment of the face of the building here, and now we're adding this portion here as interior delivery area, so that cars can basically come in. It's not much different than the parking spaces would have been, but now it's inside the building. So it basically gives them the interior delivery area. So that's the gist of what we're talking about tonight. What ended up happening as a result of that was changes to floor area ratio, which had received relief in the past, and changes to the parking requirements, which had received relief. So I can just walk through the specific numbers related to that. Let's go to the fact that, so previously, a 13,600 square foot building was being proposed here on lot 2.01, and now it is a 14,343 square foot building. That's what this notch does, which is a net increase of 743 square feet on the property. Lot 5 in the prior submission reduced the building from 12,979 to 10,978, which was a 2001 reduction. But we still propose to remove this 1,095 square foot building. So that now this is being reduced to only 11,885 square feet. So that's 1,094 less. Ultimately, this represents a 907 square foot larger building being proposed on this lot now, or net proposed. There's no real proposed building, it's really less of a reduction. So net parking, as a result, there were 128 proposed new parking spaces for this area in consideration, and the submission now proposes 118 new parking spaces.
Let me stop you right there. The paperwork that was submitted indicated that it was reduced to 127.
That's correct.
Could you run through and indicate what the issue was and why that was typographical error?
Yeah,
on the part of my
that
office?
was literally a typo on the part of our office, and so we did make that error on the plan, but when I was preparing for this hearing, I double checked that and recognized that what was actually being proposed was 118 spaces.
You have something here that says 28,534 square feet?
Is that probably?
That's the maximum building
Adding the
coverage
two
for
together?
Lot 5, correct, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
You're reducing it, it was 12,979, now it's reducing it from 28,534 to 26,345. Suddenly, the building got double in size.
That's part of the application? Or
Yeah.
that's in the memo. I checked all these numbers as I was preparing.
You want to take a look at it? That's what confused me. Second paragraph.
Lot 5, 28,000,
It went from 12,979 suddenly to 28,534.
yeah, I believe that's got to be a typo on the part of the review letter.
Sounds like it might be.
Yeah, that's not what happened. I apologize for I didn't even see that, I just,
So what's the real number in there?
yeah, so the real number there should be from 12,979 to 11,885.
And the 10,978 goes to what? Oh, I see, no, it's,
Well,
I'm
the
sorry.
12,979
Yeah, I'm sorry, I
stays
got
the
it wrong.
same,
I got
because
you.
that's what it was.
So 12,979 is going
Yeah,
to
the-
11,885, gotcha.
Right, and then the
Thank
10, the one that says 26,345 should actually say
you. 11,885.
11,885.
Gotcha.
Correct.
Thank you.
Right, so that's where we stand with that.
So let me stop you right there. Mr. Chairman, I just want to note for the record that we just became aware of this issue as we were preparing today to come in. Otherwise, I would have, my office would have supplemented with a letter as quickly as we possibly could. But we're doing it here on the record, and we don't really like to do that. So we will supplement our prior submissions to indicate precisely what the testimony was this evening.
Okay.
So we can confirm all that for the board and for the record.
Thank you.
Initially, I was going to argue it was a de minimis change, but I guess that argument goes out the window. So we'll address that in a little bit, but I just wanted to indicate that we in no way intended to mislead the board or the public with regard to our submission.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily misleading, it when the number was just didn't make sense, so.
Yeah, I think that this is still, I think in general, you can consider this de minimis. It's the typo, I think, on the Collier's letter.
Gotcha.
And they're probably, I'm not doing the math in my head, but probably combining both lots together in what they
Oh,
summed
maybe.
up as
Yeah,
the summary.
maybe.
And so
Maybe.
that's why that's such a larger number.
All right, we could continue, please, Mr. Triner?
Yep. So a few things that I would discuss, again, as was reviewed in decent amount of detail last time, since Maxon has control of all these other lots that I mentioned surrounding the property, you know, generally speaking, for their operations, they have no problem with the amount of parking that we're proposing. So this additional reduction, they are confident that their operations will be able to function adequately. A good part of the parking that they have is for inventory, but this is a much improved layout for customer, the customer-facing scenario, and gives much better customer parking options to the customer. So it's, and I think that the number really is going to end up being lost in inventory, not customer parking.
Mr. Tyner, could you just step away from that building for a moment, and let's talk about the temporary structure that's on the, close to or either on the right-of-way for a moment? Is when that temporary structure is removed, that's going to add additional area on the site for parking, will it not?
Yeah, that temporary structure is actually, has been installed because it's been permitted through the building department as a temporary structure. It's more like a tent. And it's placed on top of existing parking spaces that are there available for their use. It's their exclusive use of those parking spaces that I believe they use for inventory. And in this duration, while they're in construction, they're going to operate out of this tent structure. And at the end, that tent structure goes away and these parking spaces get restored back to them. And that's not really, those parking spaces are not included in our analysis because it's.
That was my point.
Right.
I'm glad you put it that way. It was not, it's not part of the analysis. It's not
Right.
part of the requests for variances that are being made, but that parking will come back and be available to Maxon after the building is constructed. Of course, we get a CO and we're able to move everybody back in because that's the way to do it.
Not to like get into the weeds on this, but I might as well for the board's benefit. If you see on lot 5 here also, not part of our analysis is the fact that there's another building that's operated by Buick on this lot 5, and there's all sorts of parking, which is mostly inventory, because this is also a service building, that they have available back here that we really just try to do an analysis straight up. Hey, this is the kind of area where people associated with this building would be parking, and these are the areas on this property where people would be parking associated with this building. That was the best we could really do. It's, you know, a combination of inventory, parking, tenants back here combined with inventory and everything they have available. They have ample parking at this property.
And the prior approval did include certain numbers of parking, but the parking that had originally been proposed was less than that had been required by the ordinance, is that correct?
Right, with respect to how we analyzed it for those two buildings.
So there already has been a variance provided
yes,
for parking,
right.
It's just we're asking for a
was
further
For
reduction.
further
in the number.
reduction in the relief.
Thank you.
Correct. So now I don't mind reviewing all the bulk requirements and how the relief was granted in the past, but I think I'll move to the 3 that were worth noting because these are the 3 that are changing. If you want me to go back and review them, I can again, but.
No, I don't think it's necessary, just the changes, I think.
Okay,
it's fine.
the rear yard setback on lot 2.10 and lot 5 is a 50-foot rear yard setback is required. 15.8 is proposed on, let me go back to the exhibit here. 15.8 feet is proposed on lot 2.01. That's right here between this lot line and this corner of the building. And we had already requested the relief for 15.8 because it was measured from the overhang. So that was already granted as is, but, so that's why you don't really have to change that relief. And then on lot 5.4 exists, which is being improved to 9.5 feet. Again, still was variance. So the analysis of all the building coverage changes are that on lot 2.01, a 30% maximum building coverage is permitted. And previously, we had 34%, which required the variance relief. And I believe we testified that the overhangs were not included in the building coverage calculations. If it were, the whole thing would have been 44.2% due to the overhangs. But regardless, this has changed from 34%, well, yeah, to 36%. Lot 5 requires 50%, and the reduced previously reduced was 17%, and to 15%, but now it's moving from 17% to 16%, and that's not requiring relief, because 50% is the number. But those are the changes there. And then floor area ratio, 40% is the max on 2.01, and the previously complied with 34%, but it's currently proposed at 36%. And Lot 5, being in the I zone, doesn't have a floor area ratio component. So the relief is, on floor area ratio, is the real big change here, from 34 to 36. And then, as I mentioned, I mean, there's other things. We have EV parking out here. A couple of interesting noted features of difference, just for the board to see. There were 10 parking spaces proposed along here. We have two spaces that were EV here. EV is going to be in some different locations, but this is where the building is. And when we put the new building, the new addition there, we ended up having 4 and 4, so we still were able to do 8 here. There were 5 parallel parking spaces along the side here that we had, and now we're only going to be able to put 4 there because we recognized that there was going to be a challenge with putting the transformer in this location, so it's been relocated down closer to this area, which lost us a parking space over here. But at the end of the day, the issue is the net decrease down to 118. Drainage utilities, I don't think there's anything worth really getting into. Architecturally, again, I mean, the architect is here to answer questions, but at the last hearing, we presented a rendering that really showed a perspective of the building from this angle. And you wouldn't even see the difference on the rendering, but it's really going to match all the features architecturally on the exterior of the building. As you would have seen, just this facade here would, from the street, as you looked back driving westbound, you'd see a little longer of a wall than you had seen before. And then with respect to the latest review memo from Collier's office, dated 9/6/2022, item 6.3, which states a response requires clarification. The sanitary worksheet that was submitted projected approximately 480 gallons per day. The revision will generally be consistent with that figure, which is well under the 8,000 gallons per day that's required for treatment works approval. So we just wanted to mention that. Section 5.1 of his memo is where he's pointing out the parking numbers, and I just wanted again to reiterate the typo on our plans that which should state 118 spaces are available, which would reflect as a shortage of 28 spaces. Item 6.4 on his memo talks about a sanitary easement on Lot 3. And that's because at the time of the prior application, we weren't really sure from a mechanical engineering perspective how deep the sanitary sewer might have to be. And so we just, to be safe, proposed a whole new line over to a manhole that sits here on Lot 3. But on further review, we're confident that we're going to be able to make the sanitary connection into the existing lateral that this building has. So we're not going to need to go onto the other property. We're just going to connect into that existing lateral. So that item, I don't think that easement agreement is going to be needed between the properties. And then there's item 7.5, which is another just a access easement shared, and I believe the attorney is going to provide that information as well. So I'm comfortable with everything else on the review memo, that we'll be able to comply with it in our resubmission. And I think that's it for my direct testimony, if there's any questions.
I have no further questions.
I just note for the record, Mr. Chairman, too, and for the public's benefit, the resolution that was passed for this matter recently remains in full force and effect. It's a independent approval that exists. What you've heard tonight are adjustments to that plan. So I think it behooves the board to focus on the adjustments as it was presented, with the understanding that the conditions and any relief that the board already granted remain in full force and effect, including having to satisfy, which I'll note for the record, counsel, the Collier's letter that he just summarized, both with the drainage or any other details in there that require follow-up with our engineering department. will be satisfied.
Thank you. Do any board members have any questions of this witness?
Just one. Just when you were talking about the sewer, you were saying 6.4 and 6.5, you combined them and just said that you're just going to connect to the one, you don't have to do a new sanitary sewers.
Let me,
That's going to be subject to Colliers, too, I mean, cooperatively, right? It's not something definitively being decided tonight.
This is one of the confusing parts of this application.
Yeah,
We are in resolution compliance, so the
Okay.
letters that Collier has been sending us to both my office and to Mr. Tyner, we've been addressing those comments as we go along. Normally, the board would not be part of this conversation
Oh, okay.
where we would be abandoning the necessity to tie into the other sewer.
right.
Obviously, once the building's down and the connections are reviewed, you know, this is the beauty of this today. We're not guessing. The building's gonna come down, the ground's gonna be excavated, we're gonna see exactly what it is, but they were being very cautious
Oh, okay.
when they made the original proposal, assuming that they would have to increase the flow, so they'd have to tie into the next door property. If necessary, after Colliers reviews it,
Right.
and says, no, you guys gotta tie in, we'll get the appropriate easements and we'll tie in.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Merman. Any other comments from the board? Any other questions from board members? Hearing none. Anyone from the public need to question this witness on testimony is given? Hearing none. Mr. Merman, you have other
Mr. Chairman, if the board is satisfied with the testimony, has no questions for operational, I have an operational person here, right? I also have our architect here to answer any questions that the board might have. But we are satisfied, and we believe that these are really de minimis changes to a much larger project. Our preference would have been to bring this all in one time. Unfortunately, in business these days, everything is fluid. So until our client was made aware of certain requirements by Hyundai, we couldn't come in and make those changes. So there were those requirements. It's a contractual requirement that Hyundai has, and we intend on complying with it to provide the indoor space. We think it's actually better for the public as well, because on a nasty day in the middle of the winter, who wants to walk around their brand-new car outside? So at least this will give you an opportunity to drive your clean, brand-new car out into the muck in January. But it really is, and I was not the original attorney on this, Mr. Hale made the presentation, but this really is a significant upgrade of this property. It's an upgrade because my clients at Maxon wanted to upgrade the property. They've actually had to make some financial sacrifices to do that, because as we've alluded to, it's going to be a one manufacturer dealership now, as opposed to one building handling two different manufacturers. So with that being said, Mr. Chairman, I'll rest, and I'll submit to the board.
Is there anyone that want to speak with Mr. Teresa concerning the operations and how it's affected this change? Anyone?
I do know for the record, and it's part of the record, is the Collier's letter of September 6th to Mr. Chairman and board members. And it's a little unique the way it's drafted. It was part of our packet. But it does acknowledge all the variance relief that was already granted. So
Right.
it is a nice roadmap, as it were, to the approval that Mr. Merman and his professional tonight summarized for the new additional area of the site.
Okay, in that case, is there anyone in the public that would like to make comment on this application? Hearing none, would you like to sum up, Mr. Merman?
I'm going to submit, Mr. Chairman. I think Mr. Tyner's done a fantastic job of indicating what the changes are to the plan. All I'd be doing is repeating what he's already said.
Okay, thank you. I think we can conference this now. Mr. Benevegni, you want to start us off?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like you said, Mr. Merman, this was a last-minute change in the requirements. I see no, the adjustments are very minimal here, and I see no negative impact on the building and change, so I'm going to vote yes.
Mr. McNeil?
I would agree that the incidental changes are actually improvements for the betterment of the public that you're serving. And I also plan to vote yes.
Mr. Wiley?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I agree with my colleagues. I think it's a good amendment, and I'm going to vote yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes, I concur. You did a good job of explaining what the changes were, and it doesn't appear to be anything significant, so I will be voting yes.
Ms. Alexander?
And I too will be voting yes, and thank you for explaining. And yes, I would like to go in and get my car and drive it out. A really nice place into the snow.
Maybe they have a car for you. Maybe they have a car
But
ready for
I
you.
think it's an excellent, excellent idea to do. And you presented your presentation, you defended it, and I'll be voting yes.
Thank you. For my own comments, I think also it's a minor change, and it's a nice change for customers. Has very little impact on the surrounding area and a very little impact on the operation of the dealership. So I will also be voting yes, and I would like to have a motion, please.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board grant the variance applicable to this application, and the council is directed to prepare a resolution consistent with the board's decision.
Second, please.
I second.
Second by Ms. Alexander. Roll call, please, Mr. Manguso.
Mr. Wiley?
Yes.
Ms. Alexander?
Yes.
Mr. Bentavegina?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. McNeil?
Yes.
Mr. DiGiovanni?
Yes.
Thank you very much for your
Thank you.
time. We appreciate your consideration. And I guess I'm going to see you in a couple of weeks anyway on another couple of matters.
Yeah, we'll do this resolution on the October 12th regular meeting night of the board. I think it's our next regularly scheduled.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, October 12th will be. We have a meeting to adjourn. Motion
Mr.
to adjourn.
Chairman, there being no further business coming before the board, this evening I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.